time. We're gonna take it home. Let's go. Let's go. Do it. Do it. Make it happen. Where there's a Met man, you'll find a Mets fan. Let's go. Let's go. This is a Mets year. For all your Mets here, let's go. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home Make it happen. There's no stopping us now. We're gonna do it again. It's not a question of how. It's just a matter. It's just a matter. It's just a matter of
Hello again, everybody. Joe Piscopo, Shea Stadium. The big.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets with Rob, and welcome to Mets Talk with Hayden simulcast on both channels for the first time in history. The SHEA Bridge Show is back and better than ever, and yes, we are the host. This is going to be an every Sunday weekly show. Me and Hayden every Sunday, depending on when the Mets play. The Mets play during the early afternoon. We'll have a night show like we're having right now at 7 o'clock. Or if the Mets play at night, like a 7, 8 o'clock game, primetime game, we'll be doing something around the afternoon, around 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, depending on our schedules. But we will have it every single Sunday for the entire season. Hayden, buddy, what is up? Thank you for being the host of the SHEA Bridge Show, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad Rob and I are finally doing another stream. Usually we do streams, but it's usually just on his channel or a couple times just on my channel. But no, we got him live streamed on both of our channels. So, yeah, definitely if you're listening on my channel, appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you're listening on Rob's, appreciate it. Definitely if you want to flip-flop back to each other's if you want to flip-flop back to Rob's stream or my stream, definitely go at it. Mets Talk with Hayden and, of course, Talking Mets with Rob. But, yeah, got a ton of great stuff to talk about. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly from this past week and what the future holds for the Mets this upcoming week. A lot of great stuff, player analysis, all that great stuff. Of course, our friend Pete Alonso is doing great, so that makes me a happy camper. But, yeah, LFGM, and let's get into it.
All right, buddy. So there you go. Mets Talk with Hayden. You know what to do, guys. Subscribe to his channel as well. And if you're part of Hayden's channel, subscribe over here and hang out with us. Christian, how you doing, buddy? So this is what I wanted to bring up before anything else, before we get into all the conversations. And I already know that me and Hayden are going to disagree on certain things, but that's why this content is so great, because we work well together. Even though we respect each other's opinions and knowledge, we do have difference of opinions, and that's okay. So I just want to give you a quick rundown on what you see on the screen. Obviously, you got our channel logos. You got our Let's Go Mets, because you have to have Let's Go Mets somewhere. You got the SHEA Bridge Show logo, hosted by, obviously, me and Hayden. And you're going to have the results of the week. It's basically a week and a half, sort of, but it's a full week of games. So this is what it's going to be every week. You're going to see the last week of games for the game results. And also, you're going to have the Mets record on here. Everything that's highlighted, all the logos that are highlighted in lime green is a Mets victory. Anything in red for the away team, for the other team, is a loss. So Mets lost 5, Mets won 5. Every win has been against the Miami Marlins, but that's not the Mets' fault, because that's their schedule. Again, everything has to, play itself out. It's 10 games into the season. So we are going to start with today's game, because I know everybody's so excited to speak about today's game. So here we go. Yeah, Kirby Puckett. Hey, you got to wear the Twins hat. Hey, baseball hats are baseball hats. As long as it's not a Yankees hat or a Phillies hat or a Braves hat, I think we're okay.
I think everyone should know by now. If you don't know me, if you look at all of my streams and all of my videos, I guarantee you I have a different hat on. I think there's only been 1 or 2 streams where I wore a Mets hat. So don't worry, Mets for life. See, Mets.
Yes. So, all right. So we're gonna start with today's game, and there wasn't a lot of positives. Early on, there was a positive prior to after the 3-run homer by De La Cruz, given up by Carrasco, leaving a 0-2 breaking ball right over the plate. Francisco Alvarez got his first hit of the game, of the season, and an RBI, hitting the ball to right field. That was a positive. Other than that, there was no positive. So Carlos Carrasco, I think we have to talk about him first, because right away he gave up runs right out of the first inning. So I don't know at this point, do you give him another start? Do you bring up Joey Lucchesi? Do you bring up Bundy? Anybody other than Carlos Carrasco is probably the right decision. But I want to get your thoughts, Hayden. What do you think about Carlos Carrasco's first 2 starts of the year? And what do you think the Mets should do with him?
Yeah, I mean, Carlos Carrasco, no way to sugarcoat it. His starts have just been horrible. They've been abysmal. It seems that these first inning complexities are back. We had that in 2021 where he would go into the game and he just wouldn't be fully dialed in. He just wasn't fully ready. We saw that a lot 2021. Last year, he kind of got over that, but the last two outings of the season, the first 2 outings of the season, I should say, he just is going into games and he's not fully ready. He's not dialed in. He just seems that he's very rushed, and I don't know if that's because of the pitch clock. I definitely think the pitch clock has definitely had an impact on him in a negative way. We saw that velocity dip in the Milwaukee series. Velocity started off kind of low today. I mean, he threw a fastball, it's like 92 miles per hour at one point. He's 36 years old, so he's not going to be throwing crazy 100, but still, I mean, his velocity definitely has taken a bit of a dip. And the barrels and the hard contact has been through the roofs.
And he's getting beat on breaking balls.
Yes,
that's
the
biggest issue.
And the inside pitch is just really not working out for him at all. We saw with Carrasco, to start off the game, he gave up a 3-run homer in the first, homer in the 5th, to Brian De La Cruz, who's really not known for much power. And of course, Garrett Cooper had one unfortunate inside pitch. Didn't really mix his pitches very up well. Slider wasn't looking too great. Couldn't really locate the zone. Constantly got in these 3-0 counts, full counts, drew up his pitch clock, and just, wasn't really able to get out of it. There was that one case, obviously, I believe it was in the 5th inning when I think it was Chisholm at still second. He was out, but then he had a go-ahead homer on him. So, yeah, I mean, right now, Carlos Carrasco has been very frustrating. And, for me, it comes to the point that, if we're talking a month from now and Carrasco's still having these meltdowns and these first inning complexities and just is not putting up good numbers at all, you bet that when Verlander comes back, Carrasco's going out and McGill and Peterson are staying. Or now, if it really comes to the point where, you can't wait anymore, you give him a week, if you give Carrasco another week or 2 and he's still having these meltdowns, I'm going to be sniffing around AAA, looking at guys like Joey Lucchesi, and Jose Budo. Because it comes to the point with Carrasco, whereas how many more chances are you going to give him? We faced, the Brewers lineup. Okay, I'll give him that. But this Marlins lineup isn't anything too fancy. I get it. You have a couple good hitters in Luis Arias. They're very disciplined. This Marlins lineup was very disciplined. Something that we never really saw from them a whole lot. They were taking pitches, driving up the pitch counts, but still a very unacceptable outing for Carrasco today. I'm not happy about it all. And yeah, he really struggled once again for his second start of the season. No, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He had a really bad start. His debut last game was bad. And in 11 runs, 10 hits, and 3 homers in 8 2/3 of an inning. That's horrible. Like I said, so just really isn't looking good. Velocity, splitter, not looking too good. So, we're going to have to see how things go with Carrasco.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, I think they're going to give him the start because his next start is against Oakland, and Oakland's a bad team. The Marlins are a bad team, but like you said, they got a couple of good hitters there, and they strike out a lot, but they also work the counts as well. And they got some veterans there, and they got some quality hitters. They're not great, but they're quality hitters that they're not dumb at the plate, put it that way. And when it comes to Carrasco right now, I think he's going to get one more start. I think the best thing the Mets can do right now is give him one more start against Oakland, one of the worst teams in the league offensively as well. They can't score runs. And maybe this will be a confidence booster for Carrasco if you give him that start. I think he pitches on Saturday. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. He'll pitch on Saturday because of the off day, whatever day it is. But I think it's like the middle, either the second or third game, or maybe even the first or second game of the series in Oakland. So I do think the fact that if the Mets were playing the Dodgers and Carrasco would have been up in line for that series, I don't think they would pitch him. I think they would throw up Lucchesi or Bundy or, like you said, Buto, somebody else other than him. But because it's Oakland, bad offensive team, what better way to get a pitcher confidence in pitching against a bad team who is actually worse than the Marlins offensively? Maybe he gives us 5 innings with 1 run, no runs, and maybe it boosts his confidence because his confidence is shot. And I think that's the more of an issue than because he's still throwing very similar to what he did last year, like his velocity. His breaking balls is what he had a problem with last year. But he won, 15 games last year? I know wins don't really matter anymore, but his breaking ball was the problem last year as well. He hung a lot of breaking balls, and he did that today again in his first 2 starts of the year. So I do think that the Mets are going to give him one more start in Oakland, and then after that, if he's really bad or good, even if he's decent, I think the Mets are going to keep him in a rotation. It's not what people want to hear, but if you follow the Mets, if you paid attention to the last year, especially in 2022, they're going with their veterans as long as they possibly can until they have no choice, right? They didn't have a choice with Alvarez getting hurt, so they had to bring up Alvarez. Even though they didn't have to, they could have brought up Michael Perez, but they brought up Alvarez because they know they need a little bit offense in that lineup. And Alvarez, even though he only played 1 game, which I still don't get, but, what do you expect the kid to do when he sat down for 2 days cold and then you put him in game 3? So I didn't expect a lot for them. So Carlos Carrasco, one more start, I think, against Oakland, and then see where you go from there. But let's go to the next issue because Carlos Carrasco, we already know is an issue. 2 starts, both terrible, and gave his team basically no opportunity and give him a chance to actually try to come back in the ball game. So with that said, next up, the offense. Now, I'm not too worried about the offense, and I understand that we do need extra power in this lineup. I do agree with that. But I've been beating the drum. You've probably seen it on Twitter that I wrote a post, and I've been saying it in a couple of my live streams over and over again. This is game 10. 6 out of the 10 games, the Mets scored 5 runs or more. It was 6 out of 9, but today they only scored 2 runs. 6 out of 10 games, they scored 5 runs or more. 3 games we lost was because the starting pitching gave us no chance of winning them ball games, basically giving up 5 or 6 runs before the 5th inning, and it was basically over, and we had to play catch-up. The Mets aren't a great team when they have to come back by 3, 4, 5 runs. They came back a lot last year, but it was like a 1-2 run thing, except for that Philly game as well. That they got the comeback in the 9th. But for when it comes to the offense, again, they're scoring under 4 runs per game right now. That's not sustainable. It's not. But in their wins, they scored 5 runs or more, and that's been all the games that they won. So I don't know what you can do at the moment. I know there's young kids in the minor league system. We brought up Alvarez because of injury. He's here now. How many games he's going to play? Who knows? But you know what? What about Mauricio? What about Beatty? He just came back and played today. I think he was 0 for 3 with a walk. But Beatty is probably the first choice of somebody the Mets might think about bringing him up with Escobar struggling. But with Beatty, he's been hurt 2 years in a row. I know this is not a season-ending injury, but it's the same thumb he had surgery on last year, and he missed a couple of games, and he was day-to-day. But I don't know what to do at this point except bringing up Beatty But if we bring him up, is he going to stay healthy? Because I think that's going to be the main concern. So what do you think the Mets should do either internally? I mean, I don't think they're going to make trades, but like with the 26-man roster now or internally in the farm system?
Yeah, I mean, right now offensively, this team is in a very interesting spot. I mean, we're going back to the times where this team can't hit with runners in scoring position. I mean, you get bases loaded or runners on second and third and no outs, and just so happens you can't even drive them in. We saw a lot last year. That'd be cake. Even if they weren't to get hits, they would have sack flies, fundamental baseball, put the ball in play, ground ball, the run still scores, and that's what this team isn't doing. And they did it a lot last year. You're not seeing it this year at all. And, I look at this lineup and, kind of like what we were saying before the season started, I said it on my channel a lot. And of course, we conversed about it, is there's a lot of holes in this lineup. For starters, the catcher position, which it is what it is. You hope with Alvarez up, he could hit a little bit more. Nito hasn't been crazy bad with the bat. Narvaez, when he was playing for a little bit, wasn't crazy bad with the bat once again. Parada's too young. He's still in single A, so you're going to have to give this guy another 2 years. ETA is probably 2-3 more years. But, right now, the catcher position as a whole, third base as a whole, I'm happy that Escobar dances and he's a goofy guy in the clubhouse. That's great. But unfortunately, he gets paid to go out and play baseball and not dance in the clubhouse because I could do that. But right now his production is not there. He looks horrible at the plate. He looked good yesterday. I'll give him that. He had that opposite field home run, almost had two, died on the warning track. And then he had that blooper that was caught by, I want to say Jazz Chisholm in center. But at the end of the day, he's still not producing. Keep in mind, Robinson Cano also had a home run in the Mets home opener series. And look what happened to him after that. Escobar is starting off the season horrible. He's not looking good. His at-bats are lifeless. He can't hit a single fastball, can't hit an off-speed pitch. He's swinging at every pitch, whether it's high, in the dirt, off-speed. He can't hit. It's not like he's hitting the ball hard and it's being lined out. He's just not hitting. And when he does hit, it's a little blooper to the shortstop or third baseman or a little pop-up to the catcher, and that's just that's not acceptable. And, if it comes to it, when Escobar is going 0 for 5, and then I look at AAA and Beatty's going 3 for 4 with a double, a home run, and the game-saving play at third base, what are we doing, Billy Epler? Are we doing that service manipulation? Like, what are we doing? And you can make the argument, yeah, Beatty got called up last year and he didn't perform, but at least this year, at least now he has a little bit more experience. And regardless of the experience, I think Beatty could do more than Escobar at this rate. I would rather Beatty go out there and go 1 for 4 than Escobar's 0 for 5 and strand 5 guys on base. I can't wait until September for Escobar to get hot. I'm not playing the Green Day song, Wake Me Up When It's September. I need production from at least 75% of the season, and Escobar isn't going to give you that. So you have the concern with Escobar. The DH spot's been questionable. Vogelbach's not hitting for power. He's still getting on base. I'll give him that. I'll accept that. His OBP is decently high, but I need some power from him. He's a big dude. He offers power. I need some of that from him. This lineup is essentially what it was last year. It's very similar. I question why are we starting guys like Tommy Pham and Tim LaCastro with the $330 million payroll, but I think that's a story for another time. And I'm going to say this, and I'm sure many of you guys would agree, including Rob, is that when you look at this lineup, you saw it in the Milwaukee series big time. There's 2 guys in this lineup, and when they don't produce, it's an automatic L. And those 2 guys are Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor.
Correct.
You saw it a lot last year. How Lindor and Alonso had a phenomenal season, and they helped carry that offense. They both drove in 100-plus RBIs each, responsible for so much run creation, WAR, RBIs, whatever other analytics you want to use. And then it came to the point where this season, you saw it in the Milwaukee series, the first 2 games, Alonso and Lindor went like 0 for 1 or 0 for 4 with maybe like a walk or something. Team didn't score a run. Saw in the last game, Alonso went like 2 for 4 with 2 home runs. Lindor went 3 for 3. Team put up runs. You saw it in the Miami series. Nimmo's capable of doing stuff. Marte, Canna, McNeil, but they're not going to hit for power. They're your table centers, and then it's Alonso and Lindor's job to drive them in. When it comes to the offense right now, I'm happy with Alonso. I'm happy with Nimmo. I'll give Nimmo props. He's being aggressive at the plate, and he's still getting on base. I'll
What do
give
you
him
guys
that.
like 12 walks
Yeah,
on the
he's
season?
second in the league in walks behind, I think, Vargas or whatever his
Right,
name is from
yeah.
the Dodgers. So he's still getting on base, but he's also swinging the bat. So he's increasing his slugging, but also keeping that OBP high, which is good. So you have Nimmo doing well. You have Marte doing well. You have Cano, who's hitting for a little bit more power, which I like. You have Alonso. You have McNeil, who's been doing pretty decent. But then when you look at the 7, 8, 9 of, Tommy Pham, LeCastro, the catcher, Escobar, it's a 1, 2, 3 inning, and that's not acceptable. You have the DH spot for a reason. And yeah, I mean, right now this lineup is something else. I think they're an inconsistent lineup, and we saw that a lot last year where they kind of took a little bit of a nap in late August and September. And, luckily Escobar was able to kind of pick it up, and, Alonso and a couple other guys in the mix. But you're going to need this lineup to stay hot. You're facing a lot of new teams, a lot of new pitchers with, the interleague games, of course. So, if I'm Billy Epler, you're going to be making phone calls. You're going to have to look at AAA. Look what the Brewers did. Those 3 outfield rookies beat the Mets up. Doesn't that click in Billy Epler's head that, you have guys like Brett Beatty sitting down in AAA, raking? Like, come on. So, yeah, the Mets lineup is much of a concern. And if I'm Billy Epler, you have to act. I mean, offensively, I don't think this team did enough in the offseason. I think they pretty much brought in the same lineup last year, where you saw the Phillies get Turner, Braves get Murphy, other teams get Correa and all the other good bats on the market, and you don't really get much. So it's a good lineup, but I think you still need 1 or 2 more guys when, one or those 2 other guys are slumping, that 2 other guys will kind of pick up the realms.
Yeah, and you said the 2 words. That's like the exact thing that this lineup is. We have table setters. We have a ton of them. And Lindor and Alonso are your run producers. And there's nobody else that is producing runs because you can't count on anybody else. We thought, some people was like, bringing Marte to the 5th spot, but even Marte's not a huge run producer. He might be able to if he was batting 5th. I know some people brought that in the chat earlier today, in the stream, but yeah, like I said, I thought Beatty should have started the season with the club. I think he deserved it. I know a lot of people said, oh, should Vientos, Mauricio, they all deserved it. Minus Francisco Alvarez, who didn't hit in spring. But all the other 3 guys, Vientos, Beatty, and Mauricio, they all deserved to be up. But we all knew the Mets weren't going to bring up 3 of those kids. They weren't going to bring up all 3 of them, because then you had to make a decision on certain people. Now, I can care less if Cannon's on the team or not. If you wanted to bench him, put him as a 4th outfielder, fine. But when your bench relies on Tommy Pham and LeCastro, and then you got Mauricio, Vientos, and Beatty raking in the minors, I already said this many, many times with Billy Epler. Billy Epler is not making a decision. He's either got to bring up the kids and play them, or trade them and get players that can help this lineup. Either one. The problem is he's in the middle. He's not doing anything. And that's the problem that I have with Epler, because I just don't understand the fact that, now, if you want to be a prospect hugger, be a prospect hugger. If you want to pat yourself on the back that you didn't trade any of your top 25 prospects last trade deadline, which he said in an interview right after the deadline was over, he said that. He says he was very happy that he didn't have to trade any of his top 25 prospects. Wonderful. So we got Givens, we got Ruff, and we got Vogelback. Yippee. And
Where's Darren Ruff?
Yeah, exactly. He's back with the Giants, along with J.D. Davis and 3 other Mets prospects. So in that situation, with Epler, he has to make a decision. And I don't know if he has the balls, to put it frankly, to do it, because he has not done it yet. Now, off-season trades, the Bassett trade ended up being good for the majority of the year until the end of the season. That was a decent trade. But, I mean, look at the trades. They weren't good. They were absolutely garbage. I can't stand Vogelback. The guy still gets a standing ovation, and one of the biggest ovations at Citi Field on opening day. I still don't get it. I know he looks like everybody else. The guy that works on the corner and, works in construction or works at, a laundromat, whatever. He looks like a normal person. That's why people love him. But he's not a good player. And if people keep on talking about on-base percentage, about Daniel freaking Vogelback, what's the point of having a DH that is the on-base percentage guy, and that's his best asset offensively? He's not a power hitter because 17 home runs is not a power hitter, all right? If you hit 25 or more home runs, that I consider that a power hitter. So he's not that. That's out of the question. Number two, all right, you don't hit a lot of home runs. What are you going to give me for average? 230, 220? Well, if you don't hit 30 home runs, then that's average is useless if you only hit 17 home runs. So
Exactly.
A guy who can't run the bases, he clogs up the bases, he's an on-base guy, which the Mets have 6 other guys that are just as good getting on base. So Vogelback, who is supposed to be the guy that is supposed to be protection for Pete Alonso and provide a little bit more power, is more of another table setter that we don't need. So I say it like this. Now, I had arguments with Hebrew, and I see him came back on the chat. Hebrew, he was talking about, with to bring up the kids. But here's the problem that Hebrew brought up that about the kids. He says, bring them up. Okay, but there is consequences for that, right? If the kids don't perform, a lot of people in the chat says, I can deal with them not playing well, even if the Mets are losing and not having a record to make the playoffs. Now, if the Mets, Epler says, you know what, the hell with this. Escobar, you're a backup. Canna, you're on the bench. And they bring up everybody, Vientos, Mauricio, Beatty, and Alvarez. Play all of them. Everybody else, sit your ass down. Now, if they play all of them, a lot of people will probably be happy. Me included, because trade them or play them. That's the way I see it. Don't let them stay in the minor leagues and collect dust. So what happens if now after a 101-win season, you don't go into 2023 and say, let's see what the kids got, and let's see what happens no matter what. You're not doing that after a 101-win season when you made the playoffs the first time since 2016. Okay, you're not doing that, and you have to make sure that some way, somehow, that you have at least a competitive team that is a contender for a division, win some games in the playoffs, or even possibly winning the World Series. Now, I brought up this argument. If the kids are brought up, which I have no problem with, play them or trade them, right? If they don't perform and it's turning into, say if they bring them up May 1st, and by June 1st, the Mets are struggling. They're 7-8 games out of first place. The offense isn't getting any better. We're looking like a losing team, a team that's probably not going to make the playoffs the way we're playing. Now what, right? What do? Do you send everybody back down? And who are you going to replace them with? The same veterans you just replaced them with for the prospects, right? What do? So you just let the kids play and win 75 games and say, hey, let's get it next year in 2024? What do, Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very frustrating situation with the Mets offense. And, a lot of people are, everyone's saying call up the prospects, and I agree with that to some extent. I think really the only guy that I would like to see called up, Alvarez is called up now, but it's Brett Beatty. And everyone's saying, like, call up Ronnie Mauricio, call up Mark Vientos, call up Kevin Parada. Mauricio's just got into AAA. I think I'd like him to have a little bit more time in AAA. I'll give Mauricio props. He's actually gotten much better in terms of discipline at the plate, his approach at the plate. I still want to work with him defensively, see where he's going to go, an outfield spot. Doesn't really have the body for
and they
third.
still haven't moved to outfield. We talked
more
about
second. So figure something out with him there. Vientos can make a case just as a DH, so it's a little bit less work, no defense. But I think the big guy that people are looking at is Beatty. Escobar's struggling, so he would kind of take over his spot. But I think that is the biggest reason. If the Mets offense is going to be a concern in, late May and in June or going into the second half, you're going to have to call up your prospects. I'd rather them call up and go, like I said before, I'd rather call up Beatty and he goes 1 for 4 than Escobar's 0 for 5 with, the golden sombrero of 3-4 strikeouts. I'd rather that. Defensively, it's whatever. They, I guess, kind of both offer the same. Maybe Beatty needs to work a little bit defensively, but so does Alvarez, and he's up. there's a lot of lineups in baseball. You saw the Braves last year throw out guys like Orlando Arcia and Vaughn Grisham and Michael Harris, and they just raked. And, the sophomore slump is real, of course. You saw the Brewers, like I said, this past Brewers series. You saw guys like Garrett Mitchell and their, other rookie outfielders and other rookie players go with some crazy power. Let the kids play. And, this is a prominently young, I would say it's a prominently mid-age team. The pitching staff is old, which is a little bit of a concern, and we're kind of seeing the consequences of that. Unfortunately, the Mets don't have a whole lot of pitching prospects, so that is something the Mets will explore, but that's a talk for another day. But, yeah, offensively, this team is going to need something. You can't wait for the deadline. You don't have enough time. You can't wait till September for Escobar to get hot. You're simply enough just going to need something to click. And I think this is a lineup that has proven themselves. I mean, I think Canna's guys like Canna, Marte, Nimmo, the great table setters, Alonso with power. Lindor needs to figure his stuff out, absolutely. If this dude wants to be labeled as a leader or captain, he can't be going 0 for 5 and swinging at pitches in the dirt on his knees. That's just a no-no. So offensively, it's very frustrating. And, people are saying, oh, relax, Hayden, relax, Rob. We have 155 more games. Yeah, well, last year the division was determined by 1 game. So, I mean, maybe when Billy Epler looks back at this in October and we lose the division by a couple games, he'll go, yeah, wasn't such a good idea. So, right now, I definitely think you would make the call of bringing up Brett Beatty. I said, before the season started, give Escobar a shot. But if we go into mid-May and Escobar's batting like 200 with, 5-10 home runs, then, yeah, you're going to have to, see what Brett Beatty's doing. And I think Escobar's been worse than expected. I thought Escobar was going to be bad, but not this bad. So, it's coming to the point where it's, 1 home game in and he's already getting booed. So
yeah, I was there. I heard
think he's on a very short leash. And, we're already we're already starting to see Escobar get platooned. We're already starting to see him, against righties, throwing Guillorme, and they're starting to DH him. It's not going to be Guillorme that takes his spot. It's going to be Brett Beatty. So, right now I have no problem calling up Brett Beatty. I think he's proven. I think he's a mature hitter. I think he's a much better mature hitter than any ordinary AAA player. So if I'm Billy Epler, I'm making that call up and, tell Escobar, have a seat for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with sitting Escobar, putting them on the bench, giving him a spot. This is what I do. I know the DH spot is like in shambles. I mean, Mark Hanna has been the DH 4 times in 10 games. So you already know that the DH spot is an absolute disaster. Now, I saw Hebrew said about Mauricio being the DH. I said that in my stream as well. I have no problem. If Mauricio would be the DH, that will solve your platoon problem, righty-lefty, because he's a switch hitter. Now, not saying he's going to hit, but like Hebrew said, it's not going to it can't be worse. And even if it is, I mean, you tried. I mean, at some point you have to try something different. And like I said, you're not trading people now, right? You're not going to get anybody for anything now. Right now, I mean, there's no trades happening. So, I mean, you're stuck with the internal options, and I don't know what else to do. I think, like I said, play him or trade him. Epler hasn't made that decision yet. He is right down the middle, and I just don't understand what he's doing because, for all the it seems like Cohen really likes Epler, or at least publicly he says he likes Epler. I think Epler's on the hot seat this season. I do think that if Epler doesn't get, and this is why I think Epler's going to make moves at the deadline, no matter what we need. And you know what? And I've said this for a while. I think Mauricio is one of the biggest pieces the Mets have in a trade chip because of the fact he's positionless right now. He has nowhere to play on this Mets team. Again, DH, yes, I agree with that. But I don't know where the Mets see him. I don't know what the Mets are doing. The day they signed Lindor to the extension, Mauricio should have been playing some other position. And if you really wanted to try him in outfield and see how that was out, play him for 50, 60 games in the outfield. Who cares if you win or lose games in the minor leagues? You have to develop. But they didn't do that either. He played, I think, 3 games in left field, and I guess they didn't like what they seen, and they brought him back into the infield playing shortstop mostly because I believe they don't want to put him in a position where his value declines. And I do think that Mauricio is one of the biggest trade chips for the Mets because everybody wants to bring up the kids, but if the kids don't do well and it comes down trade deadline time in July, their value goes down. So one, they don't help the team. Two, you can't probably trade them because people seen what they did at the major league level, and if they didn't do well, now you're not going to make any good trades probably, right? But like I said, Beatty should have been up when the season started. I just don't know what else to do with the lineup. Like, I mean, they'll score 6 runs and then score 2. So I don't know. Like, Beatty should be up tomorrow. That would be nice. We do got the Padres coming in tomorrow for 3. So that's not going to be an easy series. And the Mets can't hit Darvish, and he pitches tomorrow. I don't know. Like I said, either bring up all the kids or figure out what you're going to do until the trade deadline and use them as trade bait. That's the only thing I can think of. I saw Hebrew said Andres Jimenez. Yeah, well, everybody liked Andres Jimenez, but again, Cohen wanted to make a big splash when he owned the team, when he got the ownership, and he did. So I don't know. So Hayden, lineup. Who knows what the Mets are going to do? Alvarez probably not even going to play tomorrow, which,
Probably not.
He's been up 3 days, played 1. So he's going to be up 4 days and probably play once. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but, I mean, you seen it today, right? He got that nice piece of hitting. He looked very good in his first at-bat, right? Taking the ball the other way, getting that RBI. But his other 3 at-bats, a light ground ball to the pitcher, and then 2 strikeouts with multiple men in scoring position. Again, he's a Met now because he does what the Mets do. Don't hit and run in scoring position this year for the most part. But I mean, what did we expect from Alvarez when he was sitting for 2 days when he was playing every day in the minor leagues? Unfortunately, that's what Buck decided or whoever decided. Now we got the Padres. Now we have to hope that Max Scherzer isn't actually done, and he's just trying to figure out the pitch clock and the pace of the game now, because all the players, all the pitchers are clearly feeling the effects of the pace of play. 15 seconds, 20 seconds between pitches, 1 timeout per batter for a pitcher, 3 disengagements. It's not a lot of time for a pitcher of their age, Verlander at this point, but Scherzer to catch their breath basically. Talking about tomorrow's pitching matchup, Yu Darvish and Scherzer, but specifically on Scherzer. He pitched okay, 3 runs, 6 innings against the Marlins on opening day. Looked terrible against the Brewers. What do you think Scherzer is going to do? Do you think he's going to figure it out? Because his stuff is there. He's got his fastball still 96, 97, 95. His breaking ball, his slider is still nasty. Do you think Scherzer is going to figure out, because the pitch clock seems like it's causing him to wear down quicker in the game?
Yeah, I mean, it seems the pitch clock is really having a hard time for a lot of the veterans. I mean, we've been seeing guys like Carrasco. Scherzer's a very intelligent baseball player. He really knows how to throw off the hitter. It just seems his mechanics and his pitches and just location is really not there at the time. First 2 starts have been very rough for Scherzer. Obviously the first game he won, but still gave up 3 runs, which you don't like to see. Second game really struggled, and now this will be his first home game where the pressure is going to be on him. Obviously he'll have the static Citi Field Mets fans, so hopefully the home field advantage part takes place. But yeah, we've been seeing a lot of hard contact against Scherzer, and that's something he did do last year. The long ball was definitely an issue for him, obviously, and 11 in the 3rd innings, he's given up 4 home runs. So you'd like him to try to keep the ball in the ballpark, try to limit the hard contact, something that, like I said, he had the issue with last year, but this year it's kind of been a little bit worse. The walks, too, are a little bit of annoying to see. Strikeouts are still there. I mean, his stuff is still looking nasty. He's still mixing up his pitches, slider, fastball, curveball. All of his stuff is still looking good. It's just a lot of it. We've been seeing a lot of bloop hits and a lot of light hits from Scherzer. I do think the pitch clock is something that he's kind of trying to get adjusted to. I think, like all veterans, I mean, you kind of been seeing around the league. We've been seeing a lot of offense lately. I mean, I look at MLB scores, and for the past, 10 games, I mean, look at this, 11-12 in the Angels and Blue Jays game. I mean, the Rays are scoring like 10 games, 10 runs every game now. We're not seeing many like 1-0 or 2-1 games anymore. Seeing a lot of offensive games. So, I don't know if a lot of pitchers are struggling. I think a lot of pitchers are struggling, even relievers too, because, less room for error, of course, in the bullpen, and more time is taken with relievers typically. So, yeah, I think Scherzer's just, a veteran. He's having a little bit of a long time getting adjusted to the pitch clock. Luckily, none of our offensive players are. It seems like guys like Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo, Marte, Canna, everyone else in the offense seems to be doing fine with it, which is good. But, Scherzer's a very intelligent person where I think he could eventually learn to use the pitch clock to his advantage, kind of throw off the hitter's timing. We saw in spring training, of course. We saw in spring training, of course, I believe it was Scherzer, where it was someone from the Nationals, whoever it was, but he kept taking too long, and the Nationals batter called timeout. Scherzer was about to pitch, so as soon as that Nationals batter stopped him, went to step in the box, he would throw the pitch. So I don't know if that makes sense, but little stuff like that for Scherzer, he could really use to his advantage. He's very intelligent. Like I said, if Scherzer goes out there, he gives you, 6-7 innings, keep that pitch clock low, and the offense could score 5 runs. I think you're more than likely to win this ball game. I just think right now, offensively, this team is in an interesting spot. But, yeah, I mean, the projections favor the Mets. I don't know if it's based off of pitching matchups. Obviously, Darvish has been known to be a Met killer, so you definitely do hope that he is not. Padres are looking decent. Obviously, they won the series against the Braves.
They have the same record as us, I think, right?
Yeah, I believe they do. I believe they're also 5-5. They lost the series against Colorado, or split it. So yeah, I mean, they're doing all right. I believe they're also 5-5 too. I mean, you look at some of their other, if you look at some of their other key pitchers, Ryan Weathers will be making the second start. He's a rookie, so I mean, he'll probably have the pitch clock to his advantage because he's young. He's kind of capable of it. Pitched pretty decent in Arizona. And then for the third game, obviously, you'll have Blake Snell, who not been doing pretty good so far to start off the season. In the 8 innings he played, gave up 12 hits. So, 5 walks. Yet somehow managed to strike out 11.
When it comes to Blake Snell, it's either he pitches the gem against the Mets or he gets beat up by the Mets.
And that's something I think the Mets could take advantage of. The Mets have been hitting lefties a little bit better. Not even so much hitting against lefties, but they're making lefties just not be able to find the strike zone. They're making them walk. I mean, we've been seeing the Mets tread the 2 Trevor Rogers outings.
Yeah.
They made them throw walk after walk after walk. Edward Cabrera's a righty, but still. So at least this Mets lineup can capably of do that. This team is capable of working the count and being selective hitters, but they just choose when they want to be selective versus not.
When they win ball games, they get the starter out of the game by the 4th or 5th inning by working the count. That's when they win ball games. You could tell early on that they weren't working the counts. They were swinging early in counts, and usually when they do that, they have a hard time scoring runs because they don't work the count. Even though they got, I think, 11 men on base today. So I mean, if you drove in 5 of those runs, I mean, you probably would have won anyway, giving up 7 runs. But they didn't get the runs in. They had the base runners. They didn't get the runs in. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the comments. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And, listen, the Mets won 101 games last year by doing the exact same thing that they're hoping this lineup does this year, right? Working the counts, getting on base, right? A lot of table setters, going first to third on a base hit, stealing some bases, bunting guys over, and the occasional, very limited, but occasional home run, like the game yesterday when Lindor took that got on base with 2 outs, and everybody thought the inning was over. And then Alonso came up and hit the 2-run homer and basically put the game out of reach. Like that's what the Mets are, and that's what listen. I'm not saying that this is the best offense in baseball. I'm not saying this is the best roster in baseball because I'd be lying to you guys, and you should turn off the channel if I say that. But at the end of the day, we talk about this is a very similar team than last year. Well, what was the problem last year? For almost 5.5 months, it was basically nothing. They didn't have more than a 3-game losing streak all year until September. And then when it came down to the Braves series, they still had the division in their hands going into that Braves series. What was it, game 155 of the season? So if the Mets would have won the division, had the bye, and then would have faced the Phillies and got knocked out, what we would have said then? Would it have been the same tune? Or was it, okay, we won the division, we just had a bad playoff. But because we got the wild card and lost the wild card series to the Padres, it seems like everybody is so like this team won 60 games last year. Like it seems that way when you talk to people. And I understand it. And listen, I was at opening day at Citi Field, the home opener. And I even said this to people around me, and I even put it on my community page and on Twitter. I said that Met fans, they were not loud at all. Besides the ovations for Alvarez, Vogelback, and Pete Alonso, other than that, during the game, it was like nervous energy. Like everybody loved that they were back at the ballpark. It's baseball. People love it. But it was nervous energy. And I don't know if it was because the way we ended the season and the way we didn't get what we thought we were going to get in the lineup in the offseason, but it was nervous energy. I think people just assume that they're going to be bad. And, at the moment, they're a 500 team. The Padres have the same record. So are we saying the same thing about the Padres or no? Because they have a better lineup, which is obvious based on the players' names. That doesn't mean necessarily they're going to be better because they had a better roster last year than the Mets. Yet they won how many games less than the Mets? Like 11?
No one's complaining about the Phillies. I mean, look at the Phillies. They're what?
Exactly.
2-6?
I just said that. And I said that.
I mean, they're hitting. So maybe that is the one difference with the Phillies is that they're hitting. I mean, this is a shitty analysis, but you look at a lot of the Phillies lineup. I don't know it's early in the season. They all have high averages. They have high OPSs. They're getting on base. Where maybe the Mets aren't, so maybe that's kind of the concern. But still, Phillies are not looking super great. I mean, if you saw the game today, they blew that game. They just luckily won yesterday's game. So could have almost lost to the Reds, which I think they're a decent team. Maybe with the Phillies, it's Harper and Hoskins, but
I don't know. Excuses for every team with injuries, right? But at the same time, yes, the reason why nobody's calling for Dave Dombrowski's head because they made the World Series last year. If they won 87 games last year like they did and got knocked out even in the second round, Philly fans would be going crazy. But Philly fans are quiet right now because they made the World Series last year. Were they a good team or did they just get hot at the right time? Because right now, the Phillies, the 3-6 record, the problems with them right now is exactly what the problems were last year. It wasn't scoring runs. It was pitching because their bullpen sucked and their defense is horrible right now. They've had a ton of errors. Their bullpen is bad and their rotation is not pitching very well either. Their lineup has been hit all year last year. And it was their bullpen that was bad, the defense that was bad, and the rotation until later in the year got better. But they're having the same problems that they did last year right now. And will that change? Or did everybody just seem that they were a great team? Or were they a mediocre team that got hot at the right time? Yeah, they got Turner. Yeah, they bolstered the bullpen. But, again, just throwing names in the bullpen that are good or that were good doesn't mean with a volatile bullpen arms that every year you can have the best bullpen and the bad bullpen the following year. I don't know what the Phillies are. People all over the place saying the Phillies are better than the Mets. Well, based on what? Because they made the World Series? So did you say that the Mets in 2015 were better than the Nationals because they went further than the Nationals? Or was it, they made the playoffs, they went to the World Series in 2015? Because the following year, they weren't as good. So I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like in a scenario, like I understand that it's frustrating, and I understand it. It is. Believe me, just because I'm, trying, I'm not like, beating the drum of like all positivity, because I criticize this team just as much as everybody. I've done it for years. People hate my channel because I was extremely negative, and even Hayden, you saw it on my channel. People thought I was way too negative, and yes, I am. Maybe I did get a little bit more positive, but could we be a little bit more positive? We didn't make
Mets
the
fans are
playoffs.
supposed to be negative. We're New Yorkers. Come on.
Yeah, exactly, right. And look, 2016 was the last time we made the playoffs before last year. Could we be a little bit more positive that this team can still be good, and team like the Padres that everybody just assumes going to be better than everybody else or better than the Mets have the same record at this point? So should the Padres throw in the towel? Should the Phillies throw in the towel at 3-6? Or it's because they went a little further in the playoffs, which last year means nothing for this year. If you believe that, you don't understand sports at all. You can make all the opinions you want. You can make all the negative, positive comments you want. Last year matters nothing. Because if last year mattered for this year, then the Dodgers should have won the World Series because they were one of the best teams in baseball. Same thing in 2021. The Braves won the World Series. Shouldn't they won in 2022? If that's the logic you're going by history, even last year, means absolutely nothing, because the Braves won 5 or 6 more games last year than in 2021, their World Series year. And nobody could have told you that Jorge Soler and Eddie Rosario were their best 2 hitters in the World Series. Who would have thought of that one? It wasn't Freeman. It wasn't Swanson. It wasn't Riley, right? Acuna was hurt. Albies was hurt, but it wasn't the big guys in their lineup. It was Soler and Rosario. Guess what they were? Trade deadline acquisitions. So let's not act like, the Phillies went to town and the Braves went to town in the World Series, and all their big stars were the ones doing the job, when it was the people that are basically in the bottom of their lineups, the worst hitters on their team, were the ones that actually did the job. Soler now is what? He's an average player on the Marlins. Where is Rosario? Still on the Braves, but not as good. He's basically a platoon player at this point. So you can't say that this is the way you win a World Series, because if that was the way, every team would do it. The Astros won because their pitching was extremely good and they got clutch hits. Yeah, they hit a lot of home runs, but when it mattered, they hit that RBI single, right? You know why the Phillies lost the World Series? Because all they did, they were a one-dimensional team. They only hit home runs. That's it. Home runs. That was it. If they don't hit home runs in their games, they lose. And that's exactly what happened in the World Series. And granted, give them all the credit in the world. They made the World Series. They got hot at the right time. The same thing like the 2021 Braves.
Well, yeah, and that's what the playoffs are. I mean, it really doesn't matter where you finish. And I think in MLB playoffs, it's kind of like other sports. It doesn't matter who wins the division. I mean, we saw last year, the Braves win the division. Padres, the wild card team, kicks them out. Padres, the wild card team, kicked out the divisional Dodgers. The Phillies, the wild card team, kicked out the Braves. So it really doesn't matter where you essentially finish in the playoffs. Like you said, it's who gets hot and when they get hot, and if it's at the right time.
That's all it is.
And that's just how the playoffs is now. And you have random guys who just blow up. Like you said, the Braves, Soler, Rosario. No one expected them to. It was those guys that carried it. Freeman did some, sure. Albies, if Acuna was there, sure. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's the most unique guys that do it. You look at 2015, it was Daniel Murphy. Carried that team to the playoffs.
Who wasn't their best player during the season at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, what did he do during the season? I'm trying to remember. I'm like, was he this great guy during 2015? No.
He hit 295.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it just goes to show you, good guys could be bad in the playoffs, bad guys could be good, or just stay the same. That's how it goes. So, like I said, you got 155, 154 more games to go. It's gonna be a long season.
Long.
I think typically, Mets fans, New Yorkers are typically very negative, which I mean I am too. So I'm guilty as charged as that. But don't keep in mind there were a lot of slumps offensively from this Mets team last year. It's just the pitching was pretty darn dominant. Where the Mets were putting up these 4-2 games, 1-2 game or 2-1 games, because the Mets, offense was quiet. Keep in mind, you had guys like Bassett and Walker and all that stuff really hot in the first half. I mean, what they did in the second half, we're not going to talk about that. But fortunately, you don't have that. So far, Scherzer's been very iffy. Carrasco's been iffy. Give a tip of the cap to Tyler McGill. That dude's been 2-0. That dude's been on a record, low ERA, strikeouts. Changed up his approach. Velocity went down, which is fine because of his stride. He shortened up his stride, which I do like. I appreciate that, Jake. But yeah, I mean, really, for the most part, the pitching's going to need to step up. And I think that's what it is. I mean, you could have one of the best lineups in baseball. You could have a lineup of like Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt, Aaron Judge, Freddie Freeman, and the best hitters on the planet.
And you still
and then you go out there and have like Carlos Carrasco or guys that are not pitching well pitch. Yeah, you're going to lose the game. So, like I said, I think it says a decent offense. I think they just need to execute. They get on base. This team is getting on base. I mean, this team is, hitting 7, 8, 9 hits.
That never was a problem.
They're walking. They're getting on base. They're just not executing. You see now when I see 2 outs, I'm like, oh, inning's over. Last year, that wasn't the case. You'd have 2 outs, nobody on, and you still managed to have guys circle around the bases. You saw it in the Mets-Phillies comeback, the Mets and Cardinals comeback.
Yep.
The Mets, I'm not saying you need to have comebacks, but the team needs to change up his approach. And I think a big part of that is with the 7, 8, 9 in this lineup. So, yeah, right now something's going to have to change. Like I said, luckily you got 156 more games to go. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I understand that, man. I agree with you. Like I said, like it's frustrating right now because what were the Mets 10 games in, 7-3 last year?
Yeah, something like that.
So people were extremely excited. This was all of a sudden the best team in baseball, right? That's what everybody was saying, right? When things go badly, game by game, because we are a now fan base, just like most baseball fans are. They overreact to one individual game, right? The Mets won yesterday with no problem at all. Got to say, they won by 3 runs yesterday, right? No problem. Good game. The day before that, 9-3, easy game, right? Nobody was complaining, right? Everybody was happy. Everybody was good. There was some critiques here and there, which you should have critiques. But as soon as they lose, it's, this team's a 100-loss team. This team is terrible. Trade everybody. Bring up the young kids. Let's win 75 games. And then we're back to square one. The Mets win tomorrow, and they beat Darvish, say 5-2. Guarantee you, everybody, wow, look at this. They beat a good team. Or the Padres, are they a good team? Because they got the same record as the Mets. Just because they have a good roster does not mean the Angels, for years, had one of the best lineups in all of baseball, right? 2 best players in the game, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. Guess what they didn't have? Pitching. So sometimes it's not all about the lineup. And you talked about it, Hayden, the rotation. Again, it comes down to the fact that the Mets, 3 games out of the 5 they lost. Well, actually, if you really think about it, 3 games out of the 5, probably 4 now, where the pitchers gave them basically no chance to start these games. Like when you're down by 5 or 6 runs by the 5th or 6th inning, I don't care who you are, you're going to have a hard time coming back. You know what I'm saying? And it's the thing, like, you know what? When you pitch well, you give your offense a chance. Like the Luzardo game in game 2, right? David Peterson pitched really well, went hand in hand with him. The Mets didn't get a run until the 9th inning with Pete Alonso's home run to right field. Other than that, can this team win 90-plus games? Do they need to win 95 games to make the playoffs? Probably not. Probably 90 maybe 91. I don't even think so. Probably somewhere 89 to 91 to probably get you the third wild card spot. Does it really matter where you are in the playoffs? Because it didn't matter last year, right? Where are all the division winners? Right? The wild card Phillies and the Astros. Everybody else, Dodgers, one of the best teams in the National League. Braves, a lot of people assumed one of the best teams in the National League. Both of them were out in the first round. So what are you going to do? Right? You can't predict it. What the Mets have to do is make the playoffs because Major League Baseball, new playoff setup now, it's like the NHL playoffs. Only got to do is get in. Because the St. Louis Blues, I know I'm bringing up weird hockey stuff, but the St. Louis Blues a couple of years ago were in last place in the West, got the 8th spot, and won the Stanley Cup because they got hot at the right time. They played better down the stretch, got hot at the right time. In the NHL, it's the hottest team with the hottest goaltender. In baseball now, it's been proven 5 years and almost 5 in the last 10 years. You've seen the hot teams that weren't necessarily the best team go all the way to the World Series. They might have not won it, or some of them did win it, but it's to get hot at the right time. You brought that up earlier, which was a good point. You got to get hot at the right time. No matter how good your roster is, you can get beat in the playoffs. You have one couple of bad pitching performances, a bad offensive stint, and you're out of the playoffs. That's why it only matters. Like, of course you want to win the division. Right? Clearly, the bye didn't really help anybody except for the Astros. But again, make the playoffs. And I think too many people are focused just on the division. And I think that's what hurt us last year. Right? We were so happy we were going to win the division. And the players thought the same thing. And then when they got hitting them out against the Braves, they didn't have enough time to recover. They were still a playoff team. They were still considered one of the best baseball teams in baseball last year. You got to keep going. You got to pick yourselves up and keep going. Don't feel sorry for yourself. And I think the Mets did.
I mean, all that really matters is that you make it. I mean, considering as the Mets have only made the playoffs, 10, 11 times in their history since 1962, get in the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, you plan out a new way. You have a new plan. You know, I mean, I kind of used analysis of, in order to bring the girl home, you have to get her to the dance or something like that. Right now, when it comes to division stuff, I really don't know why people get so crazy about it. It's really not that big of a deal. Start talk with me about the division in September, and that's when things really happen.
Yeah. If you're in a playoff spot, who cares at that point? Just see who you're going to be ready to play and get it together. Set up
different teams. Yeah, different teams have different issues. A team like the Yankees, who have been around since 1903 and have made the playoffs 75 times. I have no idea, 75 times probably. Their goal is to win the World Series because they make the playoffs every year.
The Pirates have aspirations until they lose.
Yeah, and I mean, Mets at least get to the playoffs and then it's a new plan.
Yeah.
So, and I agree with you on that. I think last year, we entered the wild card series and everyone's like, damn, we lost against the Braves. We got swept. This is a garbage team. And then everyone, and I think that was the same mentality with the organization and the players even. And then they went to the wild card and they just, got slumped on. So, I definitely think, I think this is a good clubhouse team, no doubt. I think we have a lot of great guys. But at the end of the day, it's April. I don't know why people are talking about the division. Of course, who wasn't? Of course, I want a division title. It looks much better than a wild card.
Yeah. But does it matter if you're raising the batter in the World Series? No.
Yeah. I mean, there's been, 18 Mets. I know there's been a couple teams that have wild card teams that have, won the World Series. Obviously, the Nationals in 2019. They were a team that started off, 19 and 31 in mid-May. And people were talking about them, selling. And then what did they do? They got hot and they won the World Series. I mean, now it's not looking too great for them. But obviously, point is, teams can come back. The Braves, I mean, they were, 10 games under us. They came back. So at the end of the day, all that matters is, who gets hot when. And, I think this is a good team. I do. I think this offense is proven. You have a couple questionable candidates, and Escobar and Vogelbach, and some of your bench pieces, and
Yeah.
Carrasco, and
But
maybe
there were
one or
questions
two
all
other guys.
last year with 101 wins. Again, if it was the end of the season that people are really bitching
Right.
and moaning about, but they used the last couple of weeks of the season to justify their reasoning for the rest of the season when we didn't have any adversity all year until the middle of September, when it got a little bit closer and closer with the Braves. And that's exactly what happened with the Mets right there. And we look at just that little bit of time, which what was it, 25, 30 games out of 132 games where the Mets had no adversity at all, besides injuries, but on the field, there was no adversity. Maybe this is actually a good thing that they had adversity early on and have enough time to pick themselves up and recover, unlike they did last year. Once they got knocked down, they only had 6 games to recover, and they never did. So maybe having 150 games left is a good start. Is a good for them to recover. For it's not a bad start, it's not a great start, but it's an average start. Which the team that we're facing tomorrow and the next 3 days are considered just as average as us right now, considered by record. So
Keep in mind the Mets do have a little bit of a interesting schedule. I mean, I think a team like the Rays or Phillies have a much better schedule, but play the Padres. Then you have a 3-game set against the A's. You could sweep that. The offensive guys could get their stats up. The pitching candidates can, lower their stats or, make their stats look better. But then you play, the Dodgers. Giants have been interesting. You see how that goes. But, then you go into May and, you're playing the Tigers, the Rockies, the Reds, the Nationals. So I haven't saw, but I think the Mets had like the 7th or something hardest schedule to start off the season, something like that, for the month of April, which maybe they expected Brewers to be a little bit hot. Marlins are always just a team that comes out and just wanks you by the, gets it from the back and just beats you up. But hey, the Mets won 5-2 against them, so I'll take that. Unfortunately, only play so many division things. Talent trumps everything else. The Braves, Padres, and Dodgers have better rosters.
the Phillies, were they better than all 3 of those teams last year, roster wise? No, not even close.
I think offensively,
Yeah, but he
they
said
all have
roster,
their own
not
qualities. I kind of see the point you're getting with. I think offensively, they all have their own good qualities and separate qualities. Like
but I
the
mean,
Padres.
who beat the Padres? Who beat the Mets in the playoffs? The Padres. Was it anybody that was really, really like big? No, it was Cronenworth and Grisham, 2 of the worst hitters in their lineup out of all the others, and they beat the Mets mostly. I mean, Grisham had 3 home runs in the wildcard series. Again, the Phillies. Oh, if you said roster now lineup, I can say all right. The Phillies had a really good lineup, but I don't even think they're better than the Braves, Padres, and Dodgers lineup. They're close, but not good enough. But if you're going to bring up roster, you're talking about bullpen, bench, starting pitching. All 3 of those teams have better pitching staffs and bench than the Phillies, but yet the Phillies went further than all 3 of them, and the Phillies actually beat the Padres and the Braves. So talent means, yes, it's important, but it does not guarantee you, because if that's the case, whoever has the highest payroll should win every year, right? If that's the case, then the Dodgers should have won 5 years in a row, because a lot of people consider them to have the most talent all over the place, right? But they don't. The Angels should win the World Series then, because they have the 2 best players in baseball. It doesn't work like that. If it did, it would be a lot easier to figure out how to win. It's not how it goes anymore. In the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, because there was only 3 division winners, and at that time, in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, when the wild card popped up, there was 14 from each league. So it came down to the fact that now that there's more teams, there's opportunities for other teams that are not the best teams roster-wise to win a World Series. You don't have to have the best talent to win a World Series anymore. I think you have to get that out of your mind. Juju, good point. I wanted to bring that up, Hayden. Look at this.
And I agree with that. I mean, when it comes to it, the 2015 Mets lineup, who did they have? I mean, you look at the beginning of the
Lucas
season,
Duda.
they weren't a whole lot of offensive caliber, all-star good players. They had great pitching. They relied on their pitching. They relied on their rotation of DeGrom, calling up Syndergaard, Matt Harvey, Bartolo Colon. And then at the deadline came, they weren't hitting. They acquired Cespedes,
Juan Lagares. Get Ruben Tejada. This was the Mets lineup. Lucas Duda. They weren't a great lineup, but they made the World Series. And the Royals lineup wasn't a great lineup either. They were a lineup, oh, by the way, that was very similar to this year and last year's lineup. They had a lot of hitters that hit for average and on-base percentage and stolen bases. That was it. They didn't have a lot of power hitters. Go back and look at that Royals series in the World Series against the Mets. And even in their playoff run, they didn't hit a lot of home runs. They weren't a home run hitting team. They were very, very similarly set up like the Mets last year and this year with their lineup. A lot of on-base guys, couple of high average guys, couple of, one or two guys that can drive in runs. Other than that, they were table setters all over that lineup. So they weren't much different than what the Mets were.
And they addressed everything at the deadline. I mean, like I said, like you said, whether they had guys like, offensive guys who were not really these crazy offensive guys, average hitters, table setters, like you said, till the deadline, where they brought in guys like Yoenis Cespedes, Juan Uribe, calling up Michael Conforto. And then the team just started to build an offensive core. And then the pitching on top, the bullpen on top, and then things just really thrived for them. So, yeah, I think right now, I mean, if you look at it now, this is an insane lineup. I mean, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Canha, Starling Marte. It's a great lineup. They're just not fully there right now. I think sooner rather than later, they will. And yeah, this is by far a much better lineup than 2015, no doubt.
That team made the World Series. How?
Guys got hot at the right time. Daniel Murphy,
wow,
who is a nobody. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but
he actually is. He's an average hitter who hit for extreme power in the playoffs, who was not a home run hitter. And then why did the Mets lose the World Series? Because Murphy didn't do nothing.
Yeah, it'd be like something like Luis Guillorme just going on a tear in the playoffs, or like Luis Guillorme, or last year it would have been someone like Tyler Naquin going off. I don't even know where he is right now. But yeah, at the end of the day, it matters who gets hot and when. And, considering the Mets, I mean, you look at these scores, 9 runs, 5 runs, 2 runs, 5, 6, 1, 5. Seems if you put up 5, 6 runs, you'll try and get something. I mean, the reason I brought up Guillorme was because he's not really a power guy. So, I mean, considering Daniel Murphy didn't really hit for much power. But I don't know. Any other
coming into the playoffs and hitting 6 home runs in 7 games.
Yeah.
That's what Murphy is. Like, I mean, actually, I'm a liar because Murphy is an average guy, 300 average guy. So it's like McNeil going in the playoffs and hitting 6 home runs in 7 games in the playoffs. That's what it is. So, yeah, I mean, it's, this is a
good offensive team. I don't know why everyone's panicking. I mean, teams have their slumps. The Phillies right now, are they not? I mean, yeah, I think the Phillies are definitely kind of having a little bit of a blow without Harper, without Hoskins. They did it last year without Harper. For the first half of the season, they did it last year. Let's be real, Hoskins wasn't contributing a whole lot. And
even when Harper came back, they weren't playing well. I went to Citizens Bank in August for, what was it, a 4-game series. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or was it Friday, Saturday? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it was a 3 or 4 game series in late August when they weren't looking like they were going to make the playoffs. You want to talk about Philly fans? I've been to Philly many times at Citizens Bank Park. I never seen the Philly fans in late August not talk shit to Mets fans, no matter if they were winning or losing. They were the quietest bunch at those games that I went to. They had no confidence in that team. And now, right after the World Series, they would tell you they were the best team in the National League, which, yes, playing and getting to the World Series, yeah, you played better, but you're still not the best team. And that was the situation where, they were dead and done. They had a month. And now we're putting them on this pedestal. You know what? Why can't they be the 2015 Mets who made the World Series, made a run in 2016? Maybe they blow out in early in the playoffs, maybe in a wild card series, and they lose. Why can't they be like the Mets of 2015 into 2016? Right? Everybody was so excited for 2016 going into the season after we made the World Series the prior year. We'll see. Again, I think it's important to realize that there's not one way of winning the World Series or getting hot at the right time. You just have to. And this team is still good. And I think people are just jumping to conclusions 10 games into the season. And all of our wins have been against the Marlins, granted. But then you got to take away the wins that the Braves had against the Nationals, the Phillies had against the Reds, right? You want to take away all the Rays wins against the A's and the Tigers, who are the two of the worst teams in baseball? Does that count? Everybody thinks the Rays are the best team in baseball, but they also played three of the worst teams in baseball. So what do you think? Does that actually matter? Or because it's the Mets only beating the Marlins, we have to pay attention to that more, but not pay attention to the Rays who played three of the worst teams in baseball and are 8-0. Oh. So I don't know. What I mean, you can't have the Rays, Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like I said, when it comes to the whole divisional matchups, who really cares? But I don't know. I'm not really. I kind of do like the new balance of schedule. I think it'll make things more interesting. It'll make the divisional matchups a little bit more worth something because, you play a division rival 19 times. Now I believe it's 12 or something or 14. So I think it'll make them a little much more valuable. So the 4 series they'll play against the Braves and the Phillies will be much more valuable. So same for cases like the NL West, like the Dodgers and Padres. Padres may win that division.
I picked them to win the division.
D-backs are a little
they got better too.
Slip into third place. So yeah, but people need to realize this is a good offensive team. I don't understand why
4.75 runs per game last year, and it's a similar lineup. So you expect them to do something very similar, right?
Yeah.
So, one more question before we call it a night. We got to ask Hayden about Pete Alonso, right? Because that's
of course. I know everyone's commenting it. I love it.
So, home run total: 5 home runs in 10 games. Good start. 5 home runs in 10 games. Home run total by Hayden. How many home runs does Pete Alonso hit 2023?
Yeah, Alonso has been looking great so far.
Hold on, Jumbo.
I'm gonna give a little of analysis. Hold on. So yeah, Alonso.
I'm an old man.
Alonso's played nine games so far. He has 5 home runs, 11 RBIs. So, like I said, if guys are getting on base, which they are, this guy's gonna hit 100 plus RBIs. Could even get near the record like last year, 120 to 130, 140 potentially. But the home runs are looking good. He's hitting the ball hard. His swing's looking great. His plate discipline is still good. And he's still managing to hit for a lot of home runs, walk, keep that OBP up. His slugging's still amazingly high. His OPS still amazingly high, and still hit for power. So I'm really happy and really like to see that. Very, very impressed with Alonso's growth since his rookie season. Laying off certain pitches, not swinging at pitches in the dirt. He's been phenomenal. So I definitely think he's in for a phenomenal season. I think this is going to be his best year. I think this is going to be his best year, better than 2019, better than last year. Not in terms of home runs, but just production, average, OPS, OBP, hits, whatever you want to say. So right now, I think we could see Alonso maybe hitting. I think I'll give him 51. I think he'll get 51. I think his opposite field power, we saw in Milwaukee. He hit an opposite field home run, and then he hit one that just almost went out. Would have been gone, I think, in a couple of ballparks. And considering the Mets brought in the right field wall, maybe Alonso will want to pull the ball a little bit there more. So that could be good. So, yeah, I think Alonso hitting 51 is appropriate. His swing looks good. He's hitting the ball hard. Like I said, you're going to be playing a lot of games against Tigers and A's and all those mid teams. So those pitchers are pretty bad. Never faced Alonso, so I think Alonso will show him what it's worth. So I think 51 is a good number. I mean, I know you said it yesterday when we were texting. Maybe he'll get 63. He broke Judge's record, his rookie record. Maybe he'll break the single season record for Judge now, which, dude, that'd be phenomenal. So, hopefully this dude gets extended. This upcoming off season. Hopefully he'll get extended. He's a free agent 2025. So you definitely would like to extend him, make him a Met for life, which I most likely think he will, unless Billy Epler just brain dead for whatever reason. But yeah, he'll be a Met for life. But like I said, Mets offense, a lot of good, takeaways. I mean, Nimmo's been doing great. Like I said, his plate discipline's great, still hitting, still getting on base. McNeil's looking pretty good. I mean, he had a double today. He's walking a lot, McNeil, so I like that. Marte, Canna, whole lineup's really looking good with the exclusion of maybe like Escobar, the catcher and DH position. So, we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Francisco Alvarez is a guy that we'll keep an eye out for. Alvarez took advantage, pulled back on a nice slider today, put it the opposite field. So hopefully he can continue to do that. And I think it's gonna be a good year for the Metropolitans.
All right, so you heard it here. First Shea Bridge show of the season. 51 dingers for Pete Alonso, Polar Bear Pete, Big Meat Pete, whatever you want to call him. 51 homers from Hayden. I do think he's going to have an insane year. I think he's going to hit closer to 60 home runs. I know that sounds crazy, but I just feel like he's on a mission this year. I honestly thought that he actually he even said it that he lost a little bit of weight. He says that he felt like he was a little overweight, well, not overweight, but like added a few pounds to himself, and he wanted to lose a little bit more. So I think he's in better shape. So I'm gonna say 58 home runs for Pete Alonso. I think he's gonna have a crazy year. Now RBIs is obviously very dependent on what he gets on base and the people he have on base when he hits those home runs. Aaron Judge hit 62 last year, and he had less RBIs than Pete Alonso. So I do think I say 58 home runs for Pete Alonso. That's just mine, but 51 for Hayden. So with that said, it was a successful Shea Bridge show. First time this season. Expect it every Sunday, depending on when the Mets play. Mets play an early game, you'll get a Shea Bridge show at night. If the Mets play a late game, you'll get an earlier show before the game for the Shea Bridge show, recapping the prior week and previewing either the game that's coming up at that night or previewing the games ahead in the following week. So with that said, Hayden, final words until next week.
Definitely a very successful stream. Glad everything went well. I'm excited to start the podcast. Obviously, in my opinion, the best duo podcast YouTube Mets thing out there, in my opinion, at least. I don't know, maybe you guys disagree, hopefully not. But yeah, I appreciate everyone for tuning in, whether it's on Rob's channel, my channel. I'll put my link in Rob's channel, and I'll also put his in mine. So definitely subscribe to each other's channels if you want to hop around, whatever. Definitely please do that. But yeah, otherwise, very successful stream. No major complaints. We've got a great week coming up. Kind of just to summarize, I guess, if I can, the Mets played so far the Marlins, Brewers, and Marlins. Things are going all right so far, 5-5. The upcoming week, the Mets will be playing 3 against the Padres at home and 3 against the Athletics in California. So 6 games to go. Ideally, I would like to see the Mets. You got 6 games. I would like to see them go 5-1 or 4-2. Maybe you try to at least take 2 from the Padres and sweep the A's. So, Mets Twins World Series confirmed. Hey, listen, it's possible. So yeah, I think 4-2. 4-2 would be a nice record for this week. But yeah, that's all I got. Check
It is 3 games against the A's or 4. Oh, you're right. It is 3. Okay.
3. It's 3.
Oh,
Because it's this year now.
Oh,
So
4
yeah,
against
definitely. Yes, that's all I got. Like I said, subscribe to my channel, Mets Talk with Hayden, Rob's Talking Mets with Rob, and LFGM. Let's ride.
Absolutely, buddy. So everybody, thank you for tuning into my channel, Hayden's channel. You know, subscribe to both of our channels. If you've never seen us before or subscribe to our channels, please do. We will, once again, every Sunday, depending on when the Mets play, it will be every Sunday, weekly, previous recap of the week and looking ahead of the following games for the next week. So at the moment, the Mets are 5-5, 500. All their wins against the Marlins, and lost the game today to not get the sweep against the Marlins. Tomorrow, Padres, Darvish, Scherzer. I'll be at the game. I will do a quick little video live stream for you guys and also a short. You notice I've been doing a lot more YouTube shorts lately, so make sure you tune into that and check out that. So everybody, have a great night. Hayden, thank you for coming and figuring this SHEA Bridge Show out that I wanted to do about 2 months ago. But we got a host. We got 2 hosts. So expect to see our faces a lot more on both of our channels. So deal with it. So with that said, guys, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. See you next time, guys. Have a good night, guys. Hayden, good night, buddy.